So we've got a couple different ideas here. I'm mainly just going to give you two that we feel to be particularly useful. The first is using some kind of ball, lacrosse ball, mobility ball. This is our Mush Nova. And what I'm going to do is address tissue stiffness around the hip here. So what ends up happening is that because these short hip rotators, even the glute min, are right around the hip, tend to become a little bit stiff because they're staying in a very short range of motion. And this flexor WAD, W-A-D, tends to become stiff as part of the IT band complex. What we find is that a little bit of targeted soft tissue work here can really give relief to stiff hips and stiff IT bands. So what we do is we take this ball, we set a clock for about 3 minutes aside, and all I'm going to do is lay down, get in a comfortable position in a running shape. So I can either bring the leg up, or I can bring that leg back into a little bit of extension. So putting the body into the shapes that I would use when I'm running. And what I'll do there is, again, drop right back into our isometric concept. So I'll take a 4-second inhale. I'll contract into the ball for 4 seconds, and then I'll relax for 8 seconds, letting myself melt around. And all I need to do is repeat that 3 or 4 times, like our basic template, and you'll see that you can make lots of change. We don't have to get everything done the first day or in one session, but little doses we find in aggregation to a little bit of positional specific training, some isometric training, some better warm-up and springiness, we can see massive change. Which leads us to our second favorite mobilization around running, which is scrubbing the calves. Now, most runners are pretty astute in realizing that stiffness in the calf is required for running, but over stiffness can cause dysfunction in the heel or dysfunction in the knee or in the dysfunction of the foot. So we're not big fans of rolling back and forth. And so if we could upgrade your rolling, one of the things that we would do is we would work side to side, scanning an area from ankle bone to ankle bone and then adding in some circles in here. So again, can I get into a comfortable position, and then I'm going to get as much weight as I can take, scanning from side to side and then adding in some motion as I scan. The idea here is to try to accumulate 3 or 4 minutes a leg, and it doesn't even have to be on the same day. The idea here, though, is that we often see that athletes are rolling, but they're not actually addressing tissue stiffness. And more importantly on the roller, what we find is that if we can address how the fascia and connective tissue is articulating with some of the subsurfaces, like the tendon, we can radically improve the system. So one of our favorites is what we call a scrub. So I take my skin and notice how I'm pushing and pulling it. This is the Rumble Roller Gator, and it has a little bit of texture which allows me to have access to this scrubbing tissue. What I'm interested in is, hey, if my skin is highly adhered to the quad tendon of the leg or down below near the calf, I'm not going to have good articulation of these surfaces under load, under tension. And that can lead to an overtension condition. So what I'm doing here is just scrubbing, and I'll scrub from the base of the heel, the calcaneus, all the way up until the gastroc starts to show its head. So again, it doesn't have to be your classic mom's rolling that she's been doing since college. This is much better. This is the new hotness rolling, right? This is Millennial 2.0 calf scrubbing. So that leads us to our probably most important is, hey, how am I moving enough? One of the biggest errors we see during our when we do post-mortem debriefs after an injury, or we're talking about improving our athletes, one of the things that we're seeing is we're not getting enough what we call non-exercise activity. So particularly in runners, because we think we're exercising during running, which obviously we are, we sometimes think that, hey, I don't need to move. In fact, the rest of the day I want to recover or I want to rest. Or we have jobs that require us to sit. And one of the issues with this is that we're not actually moving enough during the day to decongest the tissues. So that running, that loading, especially when I just jump up, rev my engine at lunch or early in the morning and then come back and either start my day or go right back to work, sometimes can leave me in a situation where I haven't cleared the mechanism. I haven't cleared and decongested the tissues. So one of the ways that we find to be of good service is the use of the Mark Pro with our athletes. Now, the key here is, when do I do a Mark Pro? When could I use this? And so for us, we have sort of 2 setups that we love. One is that if I'm feeling stiff in the quadriceps, and you know what I'm talking about, then we like to use low frequency setting, on the Mark Pro, and we get just a good solid quad pump going in the device. I've got the wrong channel, there's the right lead. And what I'm doing here is just getting any non-fatiguing muscle contraction. And one of the reasons we love this is that there's no substitute for getting that 10 to 15,000 steps of walking a day. But if I'm going to use my credits and my time to be able to run and train, because that's the thing I love to do, then I sometimes struggle to get enough movement in, especially when I'm at the desk or I'm at home in the evening where I can't be moving. And so what's happening here is that this muscle contraction is sucking out, it's driving up from the calves and pushing up. That quad contraction is basically squeezing lymphatics, which is causing the entire system to decongest, including the knees. So if you've got an old runner's knee or an old issue and your knee gets a little bit hot sometimes, the best thing we can do is try to get ourselves moving to get back to baseline the next day. So as much movement as I can get in, I'm going to do. That would be my best case. But if I can't hit my 10,000 steps, boy, this is a way that we can recover. And for our athletes who are at high training volumes, what we find is that this allows us to manage even higher training volumes than we would normally be able to handle, because we can secretly get above and ahead of that congestion. I'll give you one more quick setup, and that's for stiff calves. So if we take the same setup and just go right in the middle of the calf here and right behind the knee, what we can do then, and then just get the foot into a relaxed position, is that we can get a solid little calf pump going. Now, what you'll find is that there's a big neurovascular bundle behind the knee, and this gives me access to the entire posterior leg or calf musculature. I can move the pad around until I feel like I get a good contraction. My leg, I'm trying to relax it so that I can get a good motion. There you go. And now what I'm doing is decongesting my legs. So the way I use this is that I'll use quads one day and I'll do calves the other day. And what this does is allows me to sort of bounce back and forth between legs. One lead on my left leg, one leg on my right leg. And if you can get any movement, any congestion, decongestion training in addition to some of our other ideas, you're going to find that your quality of your runs improves. You're going to find that your recovery and density of the training runs improves. And you'll find is that you can actually get more training volume in and feel more normal than your friends. And the dropping your friends on the trails is what this is all about. MobilityWatt.com for more information about how we think about running, and check out our book, Ready to Run.